CoCo Johnson, your Lady of Wellness. Join me as I address topics in all things wellness, from mental health, social disparities, and education, advocating for those who suffer in silence. Brought to you today by Rose of Sharon All Naturals, changing lives one tablespoon at a time. Hello and welcome. I am so excited today by having my special guest and longtime friend who has been advocating for youth for decades. I would like to have him introduce himself.
Kenneth Allen, Commissioner with the Indianapolis Public Schools, and also serve as the Program Director for the Indiana Trafficking Victim Assistance Program, and I'm so excited to be with you today, Carl.
Thank you. I appreciate this. So let's jump in. So we're going to start from your beginnings. Tell us a little bit about what you have been doing and what you're doing currently.
Well, I am originally from Gary, Indiana. I was born and raised there, raised by a single parent. My mom was an educator within the Gary Public Schools for over 30 years before she unfortunately passed away. And she was a single mom, and my mother couldn't always sometimes provide some of the necessities that we needed, me and my siblings needed. So I began to think about creative and innovative ways and how I could help support and come alongside my mom, because she was just doing such an amazing job, working 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And so I began to think about, what could I do as a kid to help support her? And I used to always do very well at the school candy sales. Mm-hmm. And so that prompted me to look at, selling candy, not just for the school, but for myself. So I was that kid that, was selling candy between classes and on the way to school, and became so good at it that I actually convinced my grandfather to open up a candy store in his garage. And he, of course, as most grandparents would, was very supportive. And little did I know that would be a pivotal point in my life, because I was able to provide employment for some of my friends who many times still tell me that this was their first summer job. My business at the time of its heights was doing $500 to $600 a month in profit. And so I was able to help my mom. I was able to get things that she simply could not afford. And I was able to really take that as an opportunity to get exposed to train other young people to actually start their own business. And so I closed the business when I was in about 1999. I was like a junior or sophomore in high school. And at that time, it was number 79 among the top 100 youth businesses in the nation. And that allowed me the opportunity to actually become a certified entrepreneurship instructor. And so I began to travel all across the country, teaching other young people the importance of financial literacy, how to become an entrepreneur, and giving them the tools to be successful. And did that very well. However, I felt that I wasn't able to always reach the Kenneth Allens of the world. And so I began to think about how I could, take this knowledge, this information. And so I started the Kenneth Allen Foundation for Entrepreneurship, and we've been able to train young people on entrepreneurship and financial literacy, all over the United States, as well as Nigeria, Senegal, Barbados, and Trinidad, and really just exposing young people on entrepreneurship. I believe that when you become an entrepreneur, you're not the chief executive officer or the CFO, chief financial officer. You're what I like to call the OOO, the only operating officer. So you learn, how to take the trash out, how to do customer service, how to do inventory. And then, of course, you become in a place where you can hire people to do those things. But when you do those things yourself, you develop so many skills that are transferable, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur for life. But whether you want to be a doctor, lawyer, educator, those skills are very transferable and really have kind of shaped me and who the person I am today.
Right. So you brought up a lot of great, interesting points. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you started this candy company out of a garage and selling during class time. Well, not time, but rather through breaks. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And yes, I remember the Kenneth Allen Foundation. So is that still currently running?
Absolutely. Not as active as we were in years past, but we've done work here recently with the Madam Walker Theater. They have a huge component of their program, which is entrepreneurship. Everyone knows that Madam Walker was one of the first self-made billionaires. We've been running their entrepreneurship program for the last 3 years, and it's going extremely well. I still do things with organizations like Jack and Jill here locally as well.
Nice. So I remember, I'm going to bring back, I used to be on the board of the Kenneth Allen Foundation.
You did. Absolutely.
And we also trained a group of girls to
Biz
girls to learn entrepreneurship. They got a chance to make lip balm, sell lip balm, and just they loved that program to where they kept coming back and coming back.
Absolutely.
And you have been in the city. You have your own day. Yeah, you thought I forgot about that. Tell us when that day is.
December the 4th.
So on December the 4th, Kenneth Allen Day has a key to the city of Indianapolis, which was a great honor. I remember attending that when you got that award. So you've been advocating for youth for a very, very long time.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So you have pivoted a little bit, but still on the same track. So you're now, what's your title now?
So I am an at-large commissioner with Indianapolis Public Schools, and also serve as a program director for the Indiana Trafficking Victim Assistance Program.
Wow, that's a heavy load. So you've been how many years as the commissioner?
I was elected during the pandemic, and so I began serving in January of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm entering, or just entered, my fourth year of my first term.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as for that particular occupation, you have been doing this for 4 years. So what made you want to run for that seat?
Yeah, so when I think about how to continue the legacy of my mother and how to honor and respect what she gave her life to, which was education, not only just for education for me and my siblings, but she was my first grade and my fifth grade educator. And so I have a very deep connection with her. But when she passed away, I began to think about, how do I honor her legacy? I knew that I didn't necessarily want to become a teacher, although I enjoy being able to teach entrepreneurship in a non-traditional setting. But I knew teacher wasn't necessarily a role for me. So I said, how can I really make an impact? So I began to think about my service on the Indiana Commission of the Social Status of Black Males. Been on that commission for over 15 years. I've been the vice chair and the chair. And that commission has one primary function, for those that may not be familiar with it, is we study the condition of African American males in what we call 5 focus areas: criminal justice, social factors, employment, education, and the one of them slips my mind at this time. But we get all of the data from all students across the state, and we're responsible for making a report that's given to the both the Indiana House and Senate and the governor's office, and we hope that they will look at the condition of African American males and make adjustments to policy to make Indiana a better place for African American men. And so when I began to look at the raw data, and I saw that particularly African American males were at the bottom of all the lists, particularly as it relates to education, I said, how do I use my business acumen? How do I use the fact that I've been serving on a government board all these years to really make an immediate impact? And so I began to research and discovered that the school board is one of those places where you can actually have a difference, and it's almost effective immediately. You know, when Congress or the Senate makes rules and regulations or passes laws, sometimes you don't see the effects of those for years come. But the school board, you know, can pass a policy or a rule that affects almost everybody. They shut down school for the day, you know, that affects our commerce, that affects the entire community. And so I said, I want to be a part of the change agent and really change these statistics, particularly for our children of color who really need the most love and support, particularly in the post-pandemic era.
Nice. So you brought up an interesting point, because back in the day, at least from what I remember, there was this, I don't want to call it conspiracy theory, but there was a time where they were saying that African American males or African American children at the age of, well, the grade school level of 3rd grade, they could determine which direction they would be going. Is that an accurate statement, or?
Unfortunately, it's very true. Unfortunately, the prison industry looks at test grade scores of children of color at the third grade, and if they're not able to read, write, and count, they can determine how many prison beds they would need. So that's not a conspiracy theory. That is a scientific fact, unfortunately. However, I think that me and my colleagues and even the surrounding 11 school districts are aware of that, and we're trying to do everything we can to change that narrative. One of the things that particularly our district is doing is we're focused on the science of reading, and so that really wants to prepare this next generation to read, because we know that if you can't read, you can't do anything, and reading is so fundamental to anything that you want to do, and particularly not just reading, but just the K through 12 education. I mean, once you get your education, K through 12 and graduation, you can go on and do everything, whether you want to go to college, whether you want to go to military, trade school, but the foundation is the K through 12 education experience.
So would you say that, because we have the standardized testing, and I know that's been reevaluated a couple times, and especially the pandemic kind of shifted things a lot for the school-age children. So, and there's been reports on the news that says that it really hurt the kids as far as their reading test scores and things of that nature. So in those terms, what do, as far as in your position, how do you try to navigate the negative narrative and to show, because of course news is kind of sometimes on different sides of the on different sides of the road, but what have you guys done to help bring those test scores? If that's such an important thing about the third grade, what have you guys, since the pandemic time and things have changed, what have you guys decided to do as far as bringing those numbers up so we don't have that?
Yeah, definitely appreciate the question. So one of the things our district has done is we received a lot of federal funding during the pandemic from the federal government called ESSER dollars. And with some of those resources, we've been able to do what is called high dosage tutoring. Those students that are definitely in need of a little bit of extra support. In addition to the high dosage of tutoring, I kind of mentioned that we've moved to the science of reading, which is a new curriculum and a new way of thinking. So those are two things I can think of immediately that as a district we've done. Individually, I've tried to be as present as possible. I visited the majority of the schools within the IPS district. Got a couple of our innovation schools that I still need to get to. But one of the things I try to do is when I show up and get an opportunity to share with students was I wasn't the kid voted most likely to see. If you look at my test scores, they would have said I was the kid that's most likely to fail. And so I tried to, tell my story that I wasn't, a straight A student. I got in trouble. I didn't test well. But look at me now. Now I'm on the board of commissioners. I don't have a earned college degree. I was blessed in December of 2023 to get an honorary doctorate. And so I try to, let kids see somebody who looks like them, who came from a place that, at the time that I grew up in Gary, we were literally known as the murder capital of the world. And so if you can come out of that area and still be able to thrive and be resilient and success, they're like, oh, you know what? I can do it too, because Commissioner Allen did it as well.
Nice. So for those of us that make our ways to the polls and we have the ballots and your name is on there and all these other names, could you tell the audience how important it is to understand who they are selecting on those ballots? What difference are you guys making? Because some people I know personally will say, well, I just checked the name, but not realizing the significance. Could you give us some insight on how important that is to know who you're putting in charge of your children?
Absolutely. So the first thing is, they're saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So the first thing, I encourage people to do is get registered to vote. That's the first step. Absolutely. In Indiana, you have to be 18 to actually vote. I think that there are some flexibility if you're going to turn 18 before the actual election day. I think there's flexibility to actually get you registered so that you're prepared to vote on election day. So that's the first thing. Register to vote, and then actually vote, both in the general election, which is typically the first Tuesday in November, and the primary, which is typically the first Tuesday in May. Because if you don't vote, you don't have a seat at the table. So those are the first things that I say. And then beyond that, the next step is actually researching the candidates. I remember campaigning during the pandemic And one of the first things I had to do as a candidate was, before I could introduce myself and tell them my story and my why, or in what they call in campaign my stump speech, I had to educate folks that, one, school board is an actual position that you get to vote on, in addition to president and governor and senate and council and trustee. So first, my interaction with folks was saying, hey, yes, I'm a candidate on school board. Yes, candidates are on the school board. Yeah, I don't have any children in the district, but so you pay taxes. And so you have a direct impact, or we have a direct impact on how your money is spent. So I tell people to, study as much as you can about the candidates. There are a plethora of resources. One of the great ones that I use is Ballotpedia, and it gives you an opportunity to really look at every candidate's biography, what they've done in the community, and gives you a little bit more perspective on candidates. In addition to that, for those that are here locally that be watching the show, is that you can go to IndyGov, go to the election board, plug in your address, and it'll populate every elected official that is attached to your address, from your city council person to the mayor, to your trustee, to your school board representative, to your township trustee, to your senator, your representative, the governor, your federal senators, as well as your congresspersons.
Nice. So when people go to the ballot and they choose you and the others that are running, how long is a term there?
Yeah, so I was elected in November of 2020, the pandemic year, the last presidential election, and then I was sworn in January of 2021. And so for school board terms here in Indiana, they are 4-year terms. You do receive a stipend of $2,000 per year for any school board member in the state. Typically, our district meets a couple of times a month, but if you do the job right, it almost is like a full-time job. And so I always, try to be real with those that have an interest in running for political office, particularly school board. That would be the other thing that I would encourage parents, community members, is not, the next step is, once you vote, once you participate in the electoral process, think about ways that you can engage yourself in the political process. I know everyone won't be an elected official, but I tell everybody that you can't get around politics. When you are, in fact, born in the state of Indiana, you're not officially born until the health commissioner signs that birth certificate. And most times the health commissioner is either an elected or appointed official. If you die in the state of Indiana, you're not officially deceased until the county coroner comes by, signs on that death certificate, and county coroner is an elected official in most counties in the state of Indiana. So what does that mean? Everything between birth and death is political. When you look at your toothbrush in the morning, or your toothpaste, and you see FDI, that's a government entity. That's a political appointment. So everything in between is politics. So I tell folks that get active, get engaged, and get involved.
Well, one thing I want to point out is, Kenneth, you're in charge, and your colleagues are in charge of the biggest school district in the state of Indiana. So that's a lot. Absolutely. We're not talking about little cornerstones. We're talking about approximately how many students you're affecting?
30,000 students, a $500 million budget.
Wow, that's a heavy lift. So I want to address some topics like, so there is the wellness situation with the schools. A lot of schools are turning to wellness days. Is that something IPS does or thinking about doing? And if so, why?
Yeah, I don't know if we're specifically doing wellness days, but I do know in a post-pandemic area, it has been a wake-up call for all of us, and how we look at not only educating our students, but also how we support the staff that support the students. I know that there are areas for improvement that our district can do, but I do know that we've put a lot of things in place post-pandemic to make sure that our students are, one, safe, that they feel inclusive, and they are able to be in an environment that's conducive for their educational experience.
We're going to take a short break while we're introducing our sponsors. Today we have Rosa Sharon All Naturals, and we're spotlighting their Splash. It's made out of sea moss and coconut water. Great for rehydration, and also great for just getting those nutrients into your body. 102 of those you're looking for daily. So we want to thank our sponsors, Rosa Sharon All Naturals, for today's sponsorship. So let's get back to it. So you said that you had another role that you're working with. Could you give us some insight of what your role is and what it is helping the community to do?
Yeah, so the Indiana Trafficking Victim Assistance Program, which I got involved with in December of 2015, is a statewide initiative that provides education, awareness, training, and resources to agencies all across the state that have the ability or the capacity and the desire to serve minors, and we define minors as 25 and under, who have unfortunately been affected by human trafficking, whether that's sex trafficking and or labor trafficking. And so we train law enforcement, educators, community members, business owners, hospitality workers on how to recognize and identify human trafficking, as well as make sure that those service providers that actually are on the ground servicing minors that are affected by human trafficking have the resources, aka the money, to be able to serve those young people, whether it's counseling needs, housing needs, etc. So we have a pot of money that's allocated to support those folks that actually do direct service, because we're not a direct service entity, but we make sure that those that are boots on the ground have the resource, the knowledge, and the training to do it. And I got involved in this work. I served on the 2012 Super Bowl host committee, and that's when I first really got exposed to human trafficking. One is a thing, and then secondly, that it happens here in Indiana. And as a matter of fact, it happens in all 92 counties, from Gary to Evansville, from Terre Haute to Richmond. And it doesn't necessarily always look the same in each county, but it definitely, there's no income level, there's no social economic strategy. Everybody is affected by this horrific crime. And so our staff, our boots on the ground, particularly making sure those agencies and individuals in the community have the resources and education and knowledge to address it, to stop it, and hopefully eradicate it.
Nice. So of course, you don't really think about these things until they hit home. And I don't know anybody personally, but you see it on the news, you see it on TV, you hear about it on social media, but usually we don't take action until it really hits home. So for the state of Indiana, because we're thinking we're in the middle, so it's not really happening, but it might be silenced. So what is the percentage of the rate of human trafficking? Do you have that?
Yeah, so that's really a hard number to quantify, because most victims, first of all, don't identify as victims. So it's really hard to get numbers, and there's no state database that has everybody is reporting their numbers to as it relates to human trafficking. So what I like to tell people is that I don't care whether you're in Martinsville or Maryville, it's happening in their community. It may not look the same, but be very clear that it's happened. One of the things that Indianapolis is known for is we're known as the crossroads of America. So when you think about particularly sex trafficking, if you have a trafficker that is running an operation at a hotel or a house, if the police or the authorities get a hold or get knowledge, they may get up in their car, drive to Cincinnati, which is only an hour and a half, or they may go ahead and drive to St. Louis for a couple of weeks, or drive to Louisville, which is a couple of hours, or drive up to Lake County or Maryville and hang out, because these places are so easily accessible by kind of being in the center of the Midwest. And so that makes us not only a hotspot for human trafficking, but also drug trafficking, because we are literally the crossroads of America. I also serve on the 2024 NBA All-Star Host Committee. So we're getting ready for that, which will be happening in February. And so when you think about the amount of people that will be coming in town, human trafficking will happen once the All-Star gets here, but it will be happening while it's gone. But we do see sometimes an increase of human trafficking cases when you have those major sport events, which Indianapolis does a phenomenal job hosting. But our thing is just making sure folks that get educated, and that's what I always encourage folks to get educated. We provide free education to anybody who wants training, and I think once people begin to get educated about human trafficking, they know how to identify it and know what those warning signs are to actually go ahead and make the call and report it.
Okay. So I guess my next question is that some people get it in their mindset that this is only happening to females, or it's just happening to this group and not that group. And could you talk about that more? That what not necessarily percentage, but how it's affecting all of us, even if you're not a straight victim, how does this impact the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about, some of our nail salons, they're huge for both sex trafficking and labor trafficking. You think about Indiana. I mean, when outside of, Northwest Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Evansville, we're a very rural state. We're a very agricultural friendly state. And so you think about businesses that are trying to cut costs, they typically, unfortunately, in many cases, are doing labor trafficking. When you think about the major sport events that we have, from the Final Four to the Super Bowl to All Star to the big championship games, that brings in a lot of folks into our community and makes it easier and attractive to traffickers to actually affect. To recruit victims. And so one of the things I tell people is that it's just education, awareness, so that folks know what it looks like, because oftentimes they have a misconception of what human trafficking looks like. Many times they think it's a white van coming down the street with no windows, snatching somebody, or I see things on social media like someone's putting something on your windshield to be ready. And oftentimes victims are going to school every day, they're active in sports. You just don't know because you don't know what the signs are.
Yeah. So how can we empower? So we're going to go back from the school situation, as far as how do we empower parents to speak up, let their voice be known. Can you give us some tips on that?
Absolutely. I tell parents all the time, as a school board commissioner, there's nothing I enjoy better than actually looking at parents, community members come to school board meetings and state how they feel and how they want to be engaged and what their thoughts and what they like to see the school system do. So if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, if you're a community member, go ahead, make time to come to those school board meetings and speak up and let these children know that you love them, that you care, and how you want to see their future.
Awesome. And on the sex trafficking, how can we empower our community to get more involved, to be more aware, to be watching your surroundings, or even to talking to children or whomever?
So human trafficking is a horrible crime that happens in all 92 counties. I would tell folks, one, to get educated, get trained on how to recognize those trainings. If you go to our website, www.indysb/ITVAP, again, I'll say that www.indysb/ITVAP, you'll see an opportunity where you can sign up for a training, because I think that once people get trained on human trafficking and how to recognize it, they know how to call and report. And that's essentially what we want people to do, is if you see something, say something.
So are you guys connected with 211?
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And we'll be sure to put that address on our for the description of the show, so people can reach out and know where to go for help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. So awesome. So also I want to point out, is there any other resources that you can provide to our audience that are basically don't know, like their child is having problems? Because usually when we hear about school board, a child is probably being in trouble to get expelled or explored, but this bigger than that. Can you give some tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell parents, when obviously if you have an issue with your student at a particular school, always start with the teacher. If the teacher is not able to help, go to the principal. If you can't get it done with the principal, feel free to reach out to your commissioner. If you don't know who your school board commissioner is, if you're a student within the IPS district, you can go to www.myips.org. Again, that's www.myips.org. Select school board, and you can find out each school board member in the district they cover. I'm fortunate I actually cover the entire district. I'm elected at large, so I can come and support any student with our family. And so if you send us that information via email, we do respond to those emails and make sure they're addressed, that the concerns are getting addressed.
Last but not least, how do they get in contact with you, or do you have a website, or do you have, access, not necessarily to your direct, but do you have access to any social medias or any of that?
Yeah, I'm all over social medias. Commissioner Allen on Facebook, Commissioner Kenneth Allen on Instagram, and Commissioner Allen on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Awesome.
Feel free to connect with me. I'll definitely respond back to the messages.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being here today. This has been very informative, insightful, and we hope that you are able to gain something from what Commissioner Allen had to offer us today. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Rosa Sharon All Naturals, changing lives one tablespoon at a time. And again, reach out, go out and vote. Do those things that are necessary so your voice is heard and you're no longer suffering in silence. Thank you.